Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Bells, your one-stop shop for all things Women's Wrestling Army. I am your host, Alyssa Marino, commentator for WWA, and I'm joined by veteran podcaster and dad joke connoisseur, Will Washington. Will, kick things off. I need a good dad joke.
You can't put me on the spot like
that.
I know,
putting you on the spot.
No, like dad jokes to me like come in the moments where like I'll be at a restaurant and somebody and the waiter will come by and they'll look at my table and say, "You want a box for that?" And I'll go, "I don't know. I put up a good fight." And then and I look and I laugh, and that's how that goes. And then my daughter looks and just face palms. That's how
you know you did it well too.
That's the key to a good dad joke is when my kids face palm. How are you doing, by the way, Alyssa?
I'm absolutely delightful. We have a lot of cool stuff going on. How are you doing? Now that I put you on the spot with a situational dad joke.
Yeah, I'm doing as good as I could possibly be doing right now.
Well, we hope our friends at home are all doing very well, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Pro Wrestling TV. We want to thank you for joining us for this exclusive podcast for Women's Wrestling Army. And of course, as we like to kick things off, sometimes with dad jokes, but more often than not, with news bites. So we had some really awesome snippets from the news. One, of course, being Saraya coming to AEW. Definitely had, I think, some very high hopes and lofty ambitions for the women's division. Will, what was your take?
I mean, did you hear that crowd at Grand Slam in Queens? That was, I mean, to get that reaction from that crowd. And, you could sense that some people may have known who it was by the song, but as soon as the word Saraya hit the screen, they lost it. They went nuts. It was so cool to see. It was such a great moment for her. And, I'm going to be honest. People tag me with the term insider. I have no idea what the future actually holds on any of that. And so I guess stay tuned.
Very, very fair enough. And I think the sky hopefully can be the limit. But also, since last time we spoke, you had Maria Canales Bennett as a guest on Grapsity. How was that?
Me? Grapsity? What is that? Yes, I did. Yes, Maria stopped by Grapsity a couple weeks ago and made some headlines out of that interview. I was surprised to see because I thought we talked about a lot. We really got to dive into Women's Wrestling Army. Of course, there was no way we were going to avoid talking about that. But we also got to talk a lot about her career, her time. I really loved her takes and her thoughts back on her interviewer character back in 2004, the Ditz character as we all know it. And she talks a lot about having been a fly on the wall because the funny thing is a lot of people thought that was really her. And so they thought they could just say whatever around her. Oh, it's just Maria though. Nothing we say here actually matters. And then it turned her into one of the best minds in the business. It's a great interview. Yeah, there was a lot of headlines and discussions about Divas championships and butterfly belts that came out of it, which is just funny because that's like 10 seconds of the interview, but it sparked the biggest debate on social media out of it. But there's so much other stuff there. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, youtube.com/Fightful. It's one of many interviews we do over on Grapsity, which you should know if you know me. It's a show I host every Saturday. It's great stuff.
And if you don't know Will, get to know Will.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Exactly.
And so as we're kind of talking about, of course, we like to refer to her as lovingly as Miss Boss Lady, Maria Canales Bennett, because she is, one of our great minds here at Women's Wrestling Army. And in the most recent episode of WWA, we kicked off our limited series of close-ups with the Afropunk Trish Adora. So stay tuned after this episode because we're going to have the next close-up with Janai Kai. Pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, I watched that, the one with Trish Adora. It was dope. Good job. And I had a lot of fun with that. So definitely, check those out.
Yeah, it's really exciting to we dive deeper into some of the matches that the competitors have had here at WWA and give you kind of an insider peek at what was going through their minds, how they were feeling and what the experiences were like. So it's very, very cool. But we also have lots of exciting things in the works for Women's Wrestling Army. We recently announced our first match for Anywhere You Land, which is happening on November 4th and 5th. It's a triple threat between Janai Kai, Jordan Blade, and the debuting Masha Slamovich. Violence is all I have to say, is violence.
Violence, it just I mean, I honestly, I think as if you could pick any three performers, and then we have a debuting, so that's the thing. But if you talk about performers in the women's wrestling stratosphere, I think I couldn't think of any three better names to put as the marquee match on this show than that. That's just phenomenal.
Yeah. And of course you want to make sure, I'm sure if you're watching this, you already are subscribed over on social media, but we had even more names drop earlier this week. Billy Starks, Max the Impaler, Sky Blue, Maserati, Laney Luck, Brooke Valentine, Alicia Edwards, Delmi Exo, Gia Scott, and Sierra, joining some of the incredible names that we've already released. So if you haven't yet, get your tickets right now. Like, pause this episode and go get them and then come back, because that wasn't actually the only update that we had to share. Last month on Busted Open Radio, Maria Canales Bennett shared that Gabby LaSpisa has joined the Women's Wrestling Army as our new backstage interviewer. So I think maybe it's right about that time. Let's please welcome this very exciting addition to the WWA broadcast team, producer/diva in residence at Busted Open Radio, Gabby LaSpisa.
Hi, how are we doing?
We're doing great. How are you, Gabby?
I'm amazing. I'm so excited. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see you again. I'm excited to meet Will. We're so many good things happening.
Yes. And as we had touched on, it was during that Gabby AF segment just a few weeks ago where Maria highlighted not only your passion for the industry, but your personality making you a great fit for WWA. So can you take us through just how it felt in that moment being told you'd be stepping into this role?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly a little surreal for me. I say this to people all the time just about where I've ended up in my career and in my life right now. If you would have told me this like 4 or 5 years ago, that my life would be about pro wrestling in general, I'd be like, okay, you're out of your mind. Because, I talk about this all the time. I did not start watching pro wrestling until a little over 4 years ago when I got the job with Busted Open. And I just fell in love with it, head over heels completely. And when I started at Busted Open, there were no female voices on the show. So, I kind of took advantage of the opportunity and I watched everything. I had a newer perspective because I was a newer fan. I'm younger than all those men, just so you know, by at least 20 years. So that's different. And, Gabby AF was Diva on Divas, and I only spoke about the women's division, and it kind of turned into now whatever I want to talk about now that I'm in it so much more. So for Maria to come on and say the nice things that she said when she's such a pioneer in the women's pro wrestling community and the business, it was kind of surreal. It's still a little surreal. Like, I am so excited to get started with you guys. Like, it's going to be amazing. It's pretty awesome journey so far.
Well, it's funny because coming from like the opposite perspective, right? Like, been watching wrestling for 30 something years. And so I always find it fascinating to hear newer perspectives on pro wrestling because it gives me it's just a better outlook on things. And I'm not so much of a curmudgeon when I'm hearing some of the newer perspectives. And so I'm curious, what specifically was it that really hooked you? What was it that made you, was that switch moment that made you go, oh, this is actually for me?
So it's interesting. Just a little backstory on me. I went to school for broadcast journalism, and my thing was, you too? Yeah. So I was like, my dream goal, if you would have asked me, I was like, I want to be an entertainer. I want to be the person on the red carpet interviewing all the people. That was my dream. And I loved entertainment. I love pop culture, but I always played sports my whole life. I grew up with brothers, so soccer and basketball, not pro wrestling, the different kinds of sports. So I didn't know pro wrestling existed in the sense of it was the combination of the two things that I liked the most. And I didn't know that even existed in the world. So when I first started watching, and I was like, oh, this is cool because it's athletics, but like I can have my own opinion about who I like, why I like them, if I'm into them or not. Like, it's one of those things where it's not so black and white, right? You don't have like just an MVP person or a person with the stats, or this person has the most points and this is a win and this is a loss. You could like the loser. It doesn't matter, and the next week it's whatever you want it to be. And it's like a soap opera sometimes. And like, you can laugh, you can want to cry. I think just the dramatics of it, because I don't want to say I'm a dramatic person. I mean, I wouldn't say that about myself, but I'm animated if you would like to say, but it's the beauty of that. And I think the fact that you can be a fan at any time and start watching and have a perspective and not be wrong, because anything that you think is what you think and that's your opinion on it. That's a cool thing getting into sports, right? Like, I think that's a very unique perspective and personality that pro wrestling has that no other sport has in the world.
There is a lot of gray area. Like, it's not just like, we like this team because they always win. It's like, hey, that person wins all the time, but I still don't like them. And that's okay.
Right. And
sometimes that's a reason to dislike.
Exactly.
Like, I was born in New York, so I have to like the Jets or the Giants. Like, it's one of those things. You can like whoever you want and you can have your own reasoning for it. Like, I like the bad guys, even though they're bad and we're supposed to hate them. I could be cheering for them. Like, it's so interesting. And it's such a family thing too. Like, it's amazing to see children there because, they grew up watching from their parents. And it's just, I wish I knew it existed when I was younger, but I can't say that now because I think my mind works differently because I didn't watch it when I was younger. So it's like a catch-22 in a way.
That's kind of where I was going to go to next, because you talked about it being a mixture of, sports and having this dramatic element. Of course, I know you like to emote. You emote.
Yeah. I'm from Jersey. I can't help it, Alyssa. What am I going to do?
I'm Italian from Philly. I understand.
Yeah.
But I know that I think you shared in the past you're also a reality TV junkie a little bit too. So is there an element of that you feel like plays into why you kind of were able to click with it?
Yeah, definitely. It's an easy follow sometimes, right? Like, and it's entertaining. Like, why don't you want to turn on TV and be entertained? As much as you can appreciate the flipping and the flying and the moves and, the muscles and all that good stuff, which I 100% appreciate, and the hard work. And you see these people kicking ass, when someone's cutting a promo in the sense where you're laughing out loud because they're saying ridiculous things. And it's just making you, and you don't even realize you're invested in the people until after, when you're like, oh my God, he needs to win next week or I'm going to be really upset. Like, they get you without it being too obvious to get you, which I kind of love. I'm a Housewives fan, so all that BS. But I even think pro wrestling seems more real than the other stuff. It really does. I don't care what anyone says. I believe everything that I see on TV, and I've cried and I've laughed, and they get me. It's what it comes down to. I love it.
Brings it out.
So, do you feel like your perspective, in a sense, has shifted in a way, having gone from essentially fan to digital producer?
So that's a very interesting question. I don't think anyone's asked me that before, but it's weird because I'm digital producer for Busted Open. So by doing that, I worry about, what the show puts out social media wise, clips, stuff like that. So like, I want to almost entertain the fans of Busted Open the same way that wrestlers want to entertain their audience. So it almost helps me in a sense because I'll use what works for me when I'm watching and what like grips me to be like, how can I make this in a way for the show? How can I make this so that we're almost entertaining in the same way so that you want to tune in the next day? So it's my producer brain is always on, even when I'm watching. Like, I'll be like, oh, that was kind of cool. Like, when I play that tomorrow, let's get this person's reaction, or let's do a special in this way. Like, it does not stop for me. And it's crazy. And now I use pro wrestling lingo, like when I talk to my friends, and they think I'm crazy because no one knows what I'm talking about. Like, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's really getting over. They're like, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. I popped really hard. And they're like, Gabby, are you okay? Did you hurt yourself? And I'm like, it's all good.
No, I will tell you the best thing about that is when you're around your friends enough to where they start picking up on it and like start using it themselves and not knowing where they got it from.
Yeah.
That's the best. Like, that's how you know when you've used it too much, when somebody says it back at you and has no idea where it came from.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Context out the window.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I actually make, like, my roommate's not a pro wrestling fan at all. And I make her watch with me every once in a while if she's like home. And for me, it's the most like rewarding experience because I'm not the new person anymore. So like I can watch with my eyes of her reacting to stuff for the first time. And it's genuinely entertaining. She'll be like, I don't understand. Why would he do that to his friend? Like little things where like I was the same way. And I'm like, oh, it's because, they're trying to do, but like, why? That's not nice, like little things. And they're into it. And I'm like, if you just watch it, you'll be into it. Like it's just fun and it's entertaining. We have so many options of stuff. Like it's such a blessing. It's where we've come, especially pandemic wise, everything. Like I think the time that I became a pro wrestling fan was one of the best times to become one. I don't know if that makes me biased because there was so much going on, but it's really awesome to be part of it the way that I am. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, you mentioned the last like 4, or you said about 4 or 5 years, correct?
Yes,
so
2019.
2019. So gosh, that we're talking about just 3 years. We're talking about essentially the advent of multiple companies starting up. You essentially don't have to deal with the monopoly of industry the way we've kind of known for so long. It's actually kind of cool for this time right now to be the time to introduce to pro wrestling. I always say I can't think of a better time than right now to introduce somebody to pro wrestling. So for you to have not only been introduced to it now and gotten in, that is just so cool to me.
No, it's honestly amazing. And some of the stuff too, if I don't know, like history wise, and I like ask, it's almost amazing because I relive it, like learning about it. So people love to tell me, like, if I talk to one of my hosts and I'm like, oh, so why did that happen? And they tell me, and I get like, I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense. It's like you're telling a newborn child something for the first time. And I get like excited about it to like understand now. I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm one of them. Like I get it. Like now it makes sense and I'm more invested. Asking the questions and putting like the pieces together. And I watch a lot of old school stuff. Like if they tell me to watch something, like I will, and I compare and contrast. And I'm like, oh my God, it's crazy to see what's happening now and what used to happen and just the transitions and the changes and the new stars that are being made. It's such a cool thing to see. So it's a good time for sure.
And I was curious too, what did kind of that learning process look like for you? Like, was there certain things where they're like, hey, watch this, hey, check this out, watch every Mania, like what did that kind of process look like when you first got the job?
Yeah, so it was interesting because when I first got part of Fight Nation, I was just like a general AP and I was on all the shows. So it wasn't only pro wrestling, it was like MMA, boxing, everything. And I literally worked on Busted Open one day. And my first week was WrestleMania. I believe WrestleMania, like New Orleans, was like my first week in studio. And it was one of the craziest.
It would have been 2018 then, yeah.
2018, yeah. I messed up into 2019 before, but it's been a long day. 2018, yes. So I was right about 4 years.
Yes.
That was my first time in studio. And I remember just like the vibe of the show and just how they were talking about these things. I was like, I need to do what I need to do to be part of this. So all I did was go home and everything that they were talking about, Raw, SmackDown, I just watched every single night that it was on. I watched it live. It didn't matter what show I was working. I kept up with it. And I listened to the show when I didn't work the show because I wanted to hear about, how these hosts were analyzing these things or, and then if I had questions, I would go to the producer and be like, hey, I know he mentioned this. Like, when was that? And I looked it up and I watched and I would ask the host when I worked, and I paid attention. And I listened to the show while I was working the show, which I know sounds crazy, but a lot of people, especially I feel like if you're in a job and it just like is what it is, you become kind of like robotic in just your movements and you get stagnant and you just do it for the job. I did it to want to know the understanding. So I was working, but I was listening to every single thing they said for 3 hours every single day because I was into it. So at the end of the show, when they were asking questions, oh, this or that, like I was able to have an opinion and I spoke up about my opinion. And I was never once like, oh, you're new, like, you don't know. They'd be like, that's interesting. Now, what if we did it like this way? And that's how the wheels started turning. So, I mean, I would say I just started watching anything I can get my hands on at that point, and all the live stuff. And I had already watched like the reality stuff, Total Divas, all the kinds of like pop culture things I knew. But I mean, if we're talking options, I was blessed that, you know, AEW really just started when I was becoming a fan in that year as well. So like all the stuff, I was starting with everybody else when they were having their opinions, seeing the new exciting things that were happening. So, I mean, I lucked out in that because it wasn't a whole other company that had a whole history that I had to learn about like some other companies. But it was cool. And then of course the pandemic hit, and the way wrestling changed that we watched was everybody, new fan, old fan. It was a brand new way of watching pro wrestling, and the no crowds and the way that we had to deal with things. So I lucked out in that as well, because we were kind of all in the same boat with adjusting to how we watched the product. So I would say there was a lot of factors in it, but you know, I'm very much the kind of person where if I'm like, this is what I want, I will stop at nothing to make sure that I'm there. And I mean, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of great people around me that I've been blessed to meet and know. And that's where I am now. And we're just getting started another journey that I'm super excited about. So
Yeah, let's talk about that. So of course we're talking
Okay.
about Women's Wrestling Army. So the roster, are there any members of the roster whose stories you're invested in or that you've felt you've connected with already?
Ooh, I mean, I wouldn't say anyone specifically. It's every single story is so different and uniquely amazing that you kind of can't not be invested in all these women. I am so humbled that like I'm even being like, oh yeah, like I'm going to talk to them and I'm going to be part of it, because the struggles they go through are things that might not be the biggest headlines in what's going on and everybody doesn't know about it. But I love that what Women's Wrestling Army stands for, and what Marie even said, is she's shining a light on these hidden talents, and she's shining a light on these people that have these stories to tell. And that was the big thing she said on Busted Open. She said, I love finding those diamonds in the rough. I love finding those talents that might not be seen yet and you might not know yet, because I will make sure that you know them. So I think that message is just beautiful. And if that includes me in on it, that's what makes Maria so special, that she has an eye for these things. So I'm excited for all of it. Like, I can't say there's one I'm more excited for than the other, because that would be ruling out anything. And once I meet them, I'll tell you, because I'll tell you who I like better in person or not. And then we can really chat about it.
So we
I'll
need
like
a
them all, I'm sure.
follow-up episode, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you the dirt. No, I'm just kidding.
Please. And I feel like that's such an important key factor too, like from a broadcasting perspective, is that we're kind of helping to tell their stories a little bit farther. Like, you can dig in and we can learn things about them that'll be part of an episode that maybe they can't articulate in the ring. So I think that that's such a really crucial piece of that. So I won't put you on the spot then and ask you about potential dream matches, because, you know, we want to be nice and fair to the entire roster. But I mean, as far as the landscape for women in the wrestling world right now, what kind of has you most excited about this?
I mean, it's crazy. I feel like when I first started watching pro wrestling, where women's pro wrestling was then to where it is now, and the options of where we can even see these matches take place has grown in the landscape so much. When I first started watching, I don't want to say it wasn't as taken seriously, possibly, or, you know, there was new companies, new divisions of women, and they needed to really prove themselves. I don't think that's as much in the question anymore as if these women can do what they do. I think it's like, what is coming next, because they're so incredibly talented. And what Women's Wrestling Army does, which is something so unique, is it's almost like all stars against each other. Like, that's how I see it in my eyes, is like every match is almost a dream match, because you won't see these matches anywhere else. So you say like dream match, like what's your fan? Like, every single match is something I want to see and I'm going to love watching. So you're going to tell me I'm not watching that on any other company. I'm not seeing that anywhere else, which is why it's such an amazing thing to be a part of. And like you said, Alyssa, and something you just said, like literally actually gave me chills. And when you were asking the question, was we have like the responsibility to speak for them in the way and like present them. And it's such a cool feeling of you saying that. That actually made me like really smile, because that's an amazing, it's a big responsibility, but it's such a blessing and it's such a privilege to do these things for women's pro wrestling and all these women athletes that are badass, putting on these matches, these all-star matches that are going to shock people, I think, and I think are going to represent everything that Maria and Bobby want Women's Wrestling Army to stand for. And just for us to be a part of it it's going to be epic. Like, I don't think people realize. Do you know, like, insane.
Yeah.
No one listens. You know, it's
we got to make them listen, Gabby. We're going to make them listen.
I mean, if you don't listen to me, I don't know what you're doing. I'm the loudest, most obnoxious person in the room. Normally, most of the time, right. Will doesn't even know. Alyssa's met me before. Will doesn't really know.
Give it time.
Like, this room, are you sure?
On the show. Bobby's like, rap with her. She's talking too much. No, I'm just kidding.
Like, oh.
We still have a little bit of time.
I love you, Bobby.
I guess, what was that initial feeling like, though? The moment Maria Canales, who is a name that, you know, it's so interesting to me because of the fact that, you know, again, 30-year wrestling curmudgeon here, right? Somebody who's seen Maria's entire career, but not necessarily a name that has really been a big part of your wrestling journey in terms of your viewership, but in terms of what she's helped craft for pro wrestling, she's meant more on that side of things. But what did it mean for you to get that, to get the ask, to get that call from Maria Canales?
I mean, I literally almost started crying because it was very random how it happened. And then when Maria came on Busted Open, I was like, okay, we're just going to announce it on my segment. Super exciting. And I didn't know she was going to even say the compliments that she did. So I was like, oh my God, like, she actually likes me. This isn't just because Bobby said like this would be a good idea. She cared. Like, she likes me too, because, you know, Bobby was amazing at it. And I met Bobby and Maria from Busted Open when I was just producing, and I like booked them on the show. So it was pretty amazing because I've never sat down and, you know, gone over things that I want to do or my goals and my aspirations. And it wasn't like that at all. So for them to believe in me from just, you know, knowing me for the short amount of time that they did and thinking that I would be a good fit and really being like, no, I think this is great for you and this is why, and this is what you represent and this is what we represent, and it matches. It was an amazing feeling. I don't cry about anything ever. I'm not like a big crier at all, but I almost like, I was emotional listening to Maria because she was saying the most beautiful things about me. And this is someone who has been in the business as long as she has, gone through all this stuff. And she's here saying nice things about me when I'm like, okay, like, thank you so much. I'm going to go cry, but I have like 2 hours left of my show I have to produce, so I can't. But it was very overwhelming for me because, like I said, like, I joke around and like, I love this business so much and I love pro wrestling so much, but it really did happen in a way that was an organic way of me falling into something. And like, if this never happened, or if I never took this random job that I got with SiriusXM, like, I wouldn't be where I am. And I take a step back every once in a while to think about it because it is such a wild ride. And they say like pro wrestling, that's what it is. You never know what can happen in pro wrestling. And it's the most accurate statement of all time because it's so true. And I'm so humbled and I say it all the time, but like, I'm just so excited. We're just going to kill it. I can't wait.
And you very much strike me as the type of person that just, you say yes and then you figure it out, which we love that mentality, especially in pro wrestling. You had kind of talked about how the landscape for women has really changed and kind of this journey keeps going on. What is your hope for women in wrestling in the future?
Oh, that's a big one. That's a big question. You ask the hard ones. Alyssa asks the tough questions. I mean, I think as much progress has been made, it's not done. And I don't know if it will ever be to the point where we're like, we're good. It's everything's, we're seen the exact way we want to be seen. There's no more progress to be made because I don't think that's anywhere near where we're going to be. But I think more women in general on pay-per-views on the main event, longer matches. I want to see, more promo, more storylines, everything. It's still lacking in some places where I'm seeing a 2-minute women's match. And I'm like, why is that happening? Why is this champion being represented this way? Why is it so quiet for this? Why is it the same thing? Why aren't we meeting these new women who are going through these struggles every single day and not being shined a light upon? Why is this not happening? So if I had a dream scenario, it would be equal to, if not exactly the same as what we see for men's pro wrestling every single day. I want to see women headlining a full pay-per-view again. You know what I mean? Why not? There's enough talent to go around where we can watch a whole pay-per-view of dream matches, like you said, of all-star women. Because, give me a veteran with a new girl coming up and let her get over on it. Like, I want to see it because there's so much talent in the women's world of pro wrestling, and they're not just divas. They're not just there to look pretty. They're not just there, to fill the card. Like, we can be the main event. We can hold these badass matches and bleed, and it's not something that should be made fun of, because I'm sorry, women are the entity that in the world of things that men can't do. Like, we give birth to children. I'm sorry. That's the end of the argument, Will. Like, that's it. These moms come back and they wrestle after.
Yeah.
Like, the physical, prowess of these women, it blows my mind. And just, mentally how far they've come in what they can do. And I just think we're not there yet, but let's get there. Things like Women's Wrestling Army, where we have the platform for these women, is a big step in the right direction. And I think it's only going to get better. And I think the other companies are, working on it and getting there. They're a lot farther than they've been in the past, which is great, but there's always room to grow. And I want to see it. Give me another full pay-per-view of women. I want to see it. And I want it to be 5 hours long. Why not? I would watch it.
Absolutely. I would too. No, I would too. Are you kidding me?
Would you, Will? Would you watch it?
I would. I'd be there front row. Are you kidding me? I haven't watched the pay-per-view on TV in forever, but I would be there front row, just clapping my dumbass hands off. But anyway, Gabby, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here. Where can the people find you and listen on Busted Open?
So Busted Open is live 9 to noon, Mondays through Saturdays on SiriusXM Fight Nation, channel 156. You can follow them at Busted Open Radio on Twitter. If you want to follow me separately, I am at Gab LaSpisa on Twitter. And no, I'm not. I'm at Gab LaSpisa on Instagram. On Twitter, I'm Gift of Gab SXM. I get confused. I got excited about a 5-hour pay-per-view and I couldn't think straight.
It happens to the best of us. And speaking of all the hours, we're going to have lots of hours together in November. So be sure folks at home are getting their tickets for Anywhere You Land. We're going to have a blast, and can't wait to see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Everyone get your tickets right now. I don't even know what you're doing. Pause this. Get your tickets, and we'll see you in November. I'm not talking to any of you ever again.
Pause it. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I'm glad you got your tickets.
And we'll see you in November. Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabby. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Yay. Thank you guys so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I can't wait for the follow-up after Gabby chats with some of the people on the roster so we can get the full rundown,
Oh, yeah. Still, Gabby's a hoot. That was a blast.
Oh, so much fun. Gabby's a gem. So excited to have her as part of Women's Wrestling Army, joining our broadcast team. Our friends at home, be sure that you are following Women's Wrestling Army on all of the socials. Catch our full episodes on Pro Wrestling TV. There's one coming up right now. And subscribe for early access and exclusive content over at womenswrestlingarmy.com. You get to see episodes before everybody else. And of course, we appreciate you tuning in on Pro Wrestling TV, subscribing for your exclusive content, and don't forget to get your tickets. I know we keep saying it, but
Anywhere You Land.
Anywhere You Land, November 4th and 5th. It's in the Chicago area at the iconic Berwyn Eagles Club. That violent triple threat is going to be coming your way. The Kick Demon with Russian Dynamite and the Submission Sniper. And we cannot wait to see you there. Will Washington, any parting words for me?
For Women's Wrestling Army.
Please. Army. We love it. For Will Washington, I'm Alyssa Marino, and we will see you all again very soon.